And then if somebody came in, then they came in.
This is one. It's my first time doing this, so I'm not 100% sure if this is working, but basically just gonna hang out for a little bit. If anybody shows up and wants to ask any questions, feel free to type them in the comments, and happy to answer them. Really round. Jeez. Any questions for Rowling? What?
Rally.
Everybody else is asleep. Why are you up? Who's playing? No. No thanks.
Help me.
So 2006 Evo, 16,000 miles. They only want 50 grand.
Only 50.
I don't think so. Well, no questions. This would be real easy. $14 Evo 9s for sale in the US.
So is this one actually going to be posted?
Nah, won't be posted or anything.
But like the next time you do it?
Depends if it's. I mean, if there's
You can, like,
if there's stuff worth posting. But yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out and not really worth posting that. I guess I posted a video of just rally apparently. You're not getting on my lap right now, sorry.
Or stink.
Probably Lotus. He's the one next to you. Can I make it over there?
I aspirated when I drank a tea in there.
Oh.
I can't get it to go away.
Two pictures. Just such a waste looking for like 09 for Evo 9s. one dealership out in Colorado that has like 2 or 3 decent ones.
They get their heart filled with dinner.
I think so this weekend, yeah.
Because they have the reminder just now on my computer popped
up. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you determine to be expensive or low mileage. I mean, like, I'm just looking at Evo 9s right now for something to do. And, you know, if you want, like, some of the better ones on here are close to 30 grand, and they still got 60, 70,000 miles. 35 to 38. Yeah, that's way too high. Even for, why is it so high in California? What's your zip code? Oh, yeah, final edition, yeah. People want a premium for those. I wouldn't buy those. Disagree? Yeah, insurance is ridiculous. Pretty much every car I looked at was cheaper. 3 Series, any of them, didn't matter. Do you have a zip code for California? So by cheapest one, like, I mean, you always want full coverage, but by cheapest one, do you mean like brands of insurance, like cheaper insurance companies? Because you definitely want full, and you definitely want full coverage. You don't want to have like liability only, not on something that you've actually spent real money on. And yeah, I have nothing against the Coyote Mustangs. If you like look at my notes and stuff, I don't know if you have, but my first 2 cars were Mustangs, so no problem with those. They're just too impractical for me these days. Let's see, that's a code. 92. I'm gonna do a survey. That's so weird that they wouldn't do full coverage. I wonder why. I know. She's like trying to climb up my arm. I don't know what she's doing. So I looked up that zip code in California, and I mean, it doesn't seem, it might be a little bit higher than the rest of the country because it is California, but it's not like crazy. I don't know. It might just be, you know, I don't see as many like 08s or 2010s. So maybe if you just could find some older ones for sale versus it seems like a lot of them are like 2013, 2014s. And those are going to cost more. Yeah. Any big city, Boston, New York, any of those cities is going to be super high. Lancer GTS is kind of high. That sucks. Well, if it makes you feel any better, when I was 22, I had an Evo IX, and my insurance was like just shy of $500 a month. Now, granted, my record was less than perfect, but yeah, it was stupid expensive. Whereas, like, I had a second car at the time, and that insurance was, you know, hardly anything. Just like some old Accord. Yeah, if you've already got tickets, yeah, it's going to be up there for sure. A lot of it has to do with the fact that not so much the speed, which is obviously a factor, but it's because all the body panels are aluminum and everything. So they're super expensive to repair. A lot of times, if you look into like a WRX or like an STI, it'll actually be a decent amount cheaper, even though you would think they'd be the same. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a lot of money to spend for sure. I mean, there's things you can do. Like, I don't know if you're, one of you said, I don't know if you're the same person. No, doesn't look like it. I know, like, when I was in college, my permanent address was my parents. So I actually, I don't know if this is technically legal. So I would definitely do this at your own risk. But I had my mom listed as the primary driver, even though it was my car, and I had me listed as a secondary driver. So it did actually considerably drop my insurance. It was still expensive, but I think it dropped it from like $500-600 to maybe half that. Yeah, low miles are getting especially hard to find. You know, 10s you can still do it, but that's about it. I don't know what an FA24 version is with the Subarus, so you'll have to kind of clarify that a little bit. I don't know. You know, I know I make fun of them from time to time. I actually like them. I just like the Evos more, so I don't like follow them in detail very well. Okay, the motor. Is that like, because I know like the STI in the US never gets the JDM motor. So is that like what are you thinking like in 2020 they're gonna, I mean, if that's, I don't see how these companies don't go global like that. I mean, it's the same with like Ford and the Focus RS. It's too expensive for them not to go global anymore. They can't keep making cars for every market. So they got to make one car that can meet as many qualifications as possible. See, but you're paying 500 pounds, which is, I don't know, probably roughly close to maybe $700. And yeah, that's a high number, but you got to think when I was paying this, this was like 10 years ago, and I live in a Midwestern city. So, you know, at the time, you know, like my Evo now costs me, I think it's like 100, 150 bucks a month insurance. And I have full coverage. I go above and beyond. Like I have like 100, 300, 100, which in the US is like pretty standard for like full coverage. So that's a more extreme coverage that you don't necessarily need, but I prefer to have it. And my insurance is still only about 150 10 years later. So my insurance was ridiculous back in the day. Yeah, I could see that. Like, I'm curious if, like you say, it's your son, so I'm assuming he's on your policy. And that's kind of how it was with my parents. You know, it was my car, it was my name, but since I lived under their household, it basically like came under their policy. So I just said my mom was the primary driver. I mean, in my defense, it was broken a lot. So, you know, it was home. Oh, $500 per year. Oh, no. I'm talking like mine was like $500 a month. Mine was like $3,000 a year. Yeah, that's $465 a month. Yeah, that's about what mine was. I know I just remember that with car payment, gas, and insurance, I was spending about $1,500 a month, and I was spending a ton on gas. I was spending like $400 or $500 a month on gas too. Oh, oh yeah, $465 a year. Yeah, see, that's really good coverage. Yeah, that's a really good rate. Still a good rate. Yeah. 6,000 a year. So yeah, 500. Yeah, because that's what I was paying. I know I said 3,000 a minute ago, but yeah, I was paying about 500 a month. So yeah, 6,000 a year. Yep, I was young and dumb. I mean, I had a lot of fun, but I spent a ton of money. I'm losing track in the comments here, but I did look up. I don't know if you're in the guy who was asking about California. I don't know how you feel about the MRs, but like there's a 2013 MR, $27,000, 32,000 miles. It's not a terrible deal. I'd want it down a couple more grand, but they're in the ballpark. It's got some aftermarket wheels. They look like Volks, but I don't know if they're real Volks or not, but they have that style. I like MRs, but it's not everybody's thing. So I think in California, you're going to get more competition for sure. But if you're patient and if you're willing to fly, then I mean, I had to go to Atlanta to get my Evo 8. The 10, I was lucky. I actually did get that local. I had to go to Lexington, which is a couple hours away, for my MazdaSpeed 3, with several hours for bikes on multiple occasions. So sometimes you just got to do it. Yeah, classic insurance. That's where you can save some money. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money. You know, I don't know what your situation is, but yeah, I mean, you can find a lot of fun cars that you can insure for a lot less money. You can also do like limited mileage. Like if it's not going to be your primary car, if you tell them, and if you're, I mean, you got to be truthful, because if you're in an accident and they check your odometer, they can deny you. But if you're only doing like a few thousand miles a year and you tell them that, a lot of times they'll give you a discounted rate. And I'm not a big fan of using cash to buy cars, you know, but yeah, WRXs can be a lot cheaper. Yeah, I get it if you want the 5-speed. At times I wish ours was, but I still really like the MR. So it's kind of which one has the most room? It's kind of weird. The 10 has more room, but because of the way the seats are in the 10 and because of the way the dash is on the 8, you actually feel like you have more room, or at least I always felt like I had more room in the 8s and 9s because the 10 seats kind of hug you more, so you feel a little more claustrophobic. And like the dash sits up higher on the 10 versus the 8s and 9s, which sits lower. So, and you can't see the hood on the, so it just kind of gives you like more of a feel that you're in a bigger car. The trunk though, is useless on the 10. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the seats don't fold down. If you don't know that, they don't fold down on any Evos that I'm aware of. So. Eights and 9s have the same amount of room. It's not bad. $109 a month. And the RS, they know it doesn't have ABS, and they like to ding you for that. 3 hours away, you got lucky. Mine was Atlanta, so it was just shy of 10 hours. We had a flight booked that got canceled because of snow in Chicago. Caused a backup of other flights getting canceled. So at like 2, 3 in the morning, a buddy and me drove to Atlanta, picked up a rental car, drove to Atlanta, and then drove all the way back same day because we both had to work the following day. But it was just supposed to be a quick flight in the morning and then the 9-hour drive. It was a long day. Uh, 32. Let's see, I have to go back. Yeah, I mean, it's not a terrible deal. Is it a final edition? Because, I mean, if it's just a regular 2015 32K, it's more than I would feel comfortable paying, unless it was just like that perfect car that you loved and were going to keep forever. And if they dropped it $3,000 on their own, it means they probably have more than that in it that they can drop. Yeah, WRXs are going to be cheaper. But again, it kind of comes back to that, what the WRX is made out of versus the Evos. Like when I had like my JDM bumper installed and everything, and then I hit a curb back a couple winters ago on some ice, and it dinged up the fender. So I had it replaced, and the body shop, which is coincidentally my father-in-law, he was shocked. He went to like pull it off and like almost fell backwards because he didn't realize how light it was. But that's also why it costs like, I think it was like $600 or $700 just for a fender, where a typical steel fender on a car of that price range is like a fraction of that. To be honest, I don't know much about the rally arts. I mean, I know what they are. Sadly, I mean, I love the Evos, but most of what else I get around Mitsubishi, I'm not a huge fan of. That's pretty drastic swap from Evo to Forester. Although I do have a buddy who has a Forester and he loves it, but you know, he's done like the whole, it's got, I guess, the STI motor. So he's done a whole like STI look to it and stuff. I mean, it looks cool. I mean, it just depends on like what your situation is, really. I mean, if you're young, I don't remember. Sorry, these comments, they kind of get all together real quick. I don't know if you're one of the ones that said how. No, you're not. It doesn't look like. But, you know, I would certainly wait if it means getting what you want, for sure. Insurance isn't going to change a whole lot unless your driving record cleans up, though, on the Evos, because, like I said, when we got rid of our Evo X, I remember my wife called the insurance because we were looking at different cars. We were looking at so many different cars to replace the Evo X with. And like we called and looked at to compare insurance on a 335i, and it still dropped the premium down by like 50, 60 bucks a month. It was ridiculous. Even the person on the phone was surprised that it dropped, going from a Mitsubishi Lancer to a relatively newer BMW, and it dropped. Yeah, they definitely have the higher ground clearance. Yeah, yeah, you got that lake effect snow up there. Yeah, I do have a small like clunk thing going on. They told me that when I picked it up, that eventually I'm gonna have to do something like a mustache bar or something. I haven't done anything with it, obviously. You know, on the list of problems with my car, that's that falls more under the vanity as far as I'm concerned. And that's really just under normal driving, because trust me, the last thing I've been doing lately is dropping clutches. Plus, I still have an OEM clutch, and those are good for about a dozen clutch drops, and then it's over. Yeah, STIs are a lot cheaper. And like I said, it's because it's not about the power or performance or anything. It's all about what they're made out of. And a WRX, like a base Impreza and an STI, even though they're like 20 grand apart, still share like most of the body panels, where a regular Lancer and an Evo share basically the unibody they share, and which covers like the rear quarter, and the bumper's different, the trunk's different, the doors are different, the fenders are different, the hood is different, the bumper's different. So that's it. So, and the roof's different on some of them too. So yeah, I mean, really, it's just the unibody and the C-pillar that they share with the regular Lancers. Yeah, mine's not a delete, or I don't think he was telling me I should necessarily. Maybe he was. I don't know. Honestly, when he talked to me about the mustache bar, we were wrapping things up, and he mentioned it and just said, I think that's what he was probably talking about, was the delete. Yeah, I've heard of guys changing the bushings. Are you talking about on the suspension or on the shifter? I've heard of both. The suspension kind of worries me though, because that can really make it uncomfortable. Easiest way to tell them the clutch really is like get on the highway when there's not much traffic and put it in fifth gear and kind of go at a little bit slower speed, maybe like, I don't know, 50 miles an hour or something, and just floor it and watch your RPM gauge and see what it does. If your RPM gauge doesn't go up in a linear fashion, then it's a good indicator that your clutch is starting to slip. Yeah, the bushings on the suspension or the diff or whatever. I don't know much about that. I don't know how that's going to really affect it. I would imagine they would just hold up better, because I mean, a lot of the OEM ones are like rubber, which will break down over time. Rubber is not a natural, it shouldn't be in cold weather. So it doesn't last forever. Yeah, speaking of STIs, by the way, if you want to, I don't know if I'm the only one that just browses Auto Trader for random cars at times, but if you really want to get depressed about used Evo pricing, you should look up used STI pricing, because you can get like an STI that's like just a couple years old with hardly any miles for what you would pay for a used Evo 10 at this point. Tires that I use are Michelin Pilot Sport ASW3, I believe, because that's the all-season version. I actually don't like all-season tires at all, but they were on the 10 when I bought it. I think it's ASW3. Yeah. Yeah, it's the AS3, not ASW. I mean, they're good tires. It's just, I would much rather have, like when we had I would much rather have a set of winter and a set of summer tire tread, because the difference is just huge when you have proper winter tires. Even if you don't get snow, it makes a huge difference. So like when the 10 we had, I traded it in with the winter tires, but I had Blizzaks on it. And then when these ones run out, I'll probably just switch them to like the regular Pilot Sports and then do the same thing. Just get a second set of Blizzaks. Yeah, and as far as like too stiff, yeah, I mean that's the problem that a lot of people run into. Because trust me, if it's good for the track, you're not going to enjoy it on the street. And then if you don't enjoy it on the street, you're not going to drive it as much. You're going to get tired of it and you're going to sell it. And that's what ends up happening a lot of the times. That's what happens when people buy like really massive turbos. Every person that I've like really talked to that's done like these like 35R or larger turbos, you know, they talk about how amazingly fun it is, but at the same time, it gets old. The fact that you can't even beat a minivan off a stoplight, really. Well, I mean, a lot of the body panels are aluminum, so you don't have as big of a rust issue necessarily, but it can still happen for sure. You see it, oddly enough, a lot in the engine bay when they get bad, so that's a big spot to look for. And then there's another spot, and I'm blanking on where it is. There's another spot that's but the engine bay, like around that hole, just really around like the front and the engine. But like if you pop the hood and look back towards the firewall a lot of times, or on the just inside the fenders, you'll see that. Yeah, I bet rust is an issue in the UK. That was a huge issue for me with the FJ. That's actually why I bought an FJ, because I could not find a 4Runner without rust underneath it. So I found that FJ, and it was a Southern car, and I went to Tennessee. I flew to Tennessee and bought it. It was originally from Texas. It's funny. Yeah, I had a year was it? I don't know if it was a 94 Integra, I think. And I bought it this way off of a kind of friend or whatever. And yeah, it was so stiff, and I mean it was fun, but that thing set so low that I would actually I remember the first time I drove it, I went to go into a gas station off like a main road, and the car just like stopped because the bumper basically like ran into the curb. Yeah, I kept the thing for a couple months and sold it. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I wonder why they didn't want to paint it. I don't know. Maybe painting aluminum is harder or something. With the tents, so oddly, like there's a lot of things that bother me about, buying used Evos, but rust isn't really like high on the list. They hold up pretty well. I mean, you definitely got to be more alert to it. But I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. Now, like I said, if you're looking at like a 4Runner or like some sort of body on frame SUV, absolutely. You want to be any car I found in the Northeast and everything. If they didn't show me a picture of the underbody, that's the first thing I asked for before I even wanted to talk anymore. I should try to find a picture of that old Integra. That thing, I mean, it was just on the ground. It was ridiculous. I'm actually leaning more towards wrap as well. I wanted to do a repaint, but now I'm just kind of thinking it's just easier to wrap it. Yeah, I think so too. It's not permanent, which is the big thing. Plus, you can get like a really good wrap job for $3,000 to $5,000, where a really good paint job you can't have for that cheap. Yeah, you don't have to, and you don't have to worry about rust underneath, really, because I mean, I guess like the exhaust and some stuff could technically, but like the unibody itself, you don't have to worry about because it's a unibody and it's got sprayed stuff down there. So, I mean, I definitely look at it, but I wouldn't be as concerned. Um, Now, honestly, I actually like white. My Evo 9 was white, and when it comes to Evos, it probably goes white, red, gray. That's the colors I prefer. But I don't think I wouldn't wrap it white. I'd probably do something stupid and very attention oriented, to be honest. I don't know what that is, but if any of you guys, I think it's called Skeppel on Instagram. They do like all the DDE cars and stuff. You should follow them on Instagram, and they do like crazy stuff. So probably something like that. Let me look them up real quick. Yeah, Skeppel, Skepple. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not. It's too washed out. Nah. But yeah, I mean, they do. So I don't know what it would be, but they do some crazy stuff. Because I mean, if you're going to wrap it, might as well go a little crazy. Now, if I was going to repaint it, absolutely, I would just go with the OEM white. I would never repaint it a different color. You know, the 10s are still so new that it's not as crazy yet. If it's an MR, you need to have the transmission really looked at unless it's got low miles. If it's not an MR, I mean, I'm always a fan of PPIs. Problem is, it's getting harder to find Mitsubishi dealerships. Some other dealerships will do them too. If you live near like a good, well-known shop that either specializes or does a lot of Evo work, definitely is a good option as well. Other than that, you know, there's not like anything crazy with the 10s. With the 8s and the 9s, there's so many weird, like intricate things because I was around them so much. With the 10s, I didn't really see that as much. There wasn't a lot of things that I was like fearful of. Trying to think. That's kind of why like I haven't done a 10 video like that, because there's not like a huge, like with the 8s and 9s, there's so many things that get changed. And that was so common back then that with the 10s just really just don't have that. I will say one thing to look for is to make sure they didn't swap the seats out though. Then you can look for like some common things. Look at like when you're looking under the engine, like look at the bolts and everything and see if they look like they've been removed and put back. The brakes, if it's an MR, the brakes, because they're super expensive to replace, really even any of the brakes, they wear a lot faster than you think they should. You know, if you see it like, oh, brakes replaced 10,000 miles ago, well, that doesn't mean anything on an Evo. So definitely check them. Same with the clutch. Doesn't matter when it was changed. You need to check it. GTS STD, any suggestions? GTS, do you mean like an Eclipse GTS? Oh, that's your GTS. So like, give me like an example of specifically like what you're looking for as far as like suggestions with it, with the Lancer. Yeah. Originally, even before wraps were getting so big, I wanted to wrap my roof black, and that may still be something I do before long because it definitely looks better. It's kind of nice about the RS is that they've already done a lot of that for you just by lack of paint. The mirrors and everything's already black. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with that. I didn't even necessarily know that I wanted white when I bought my first one. But when I went to the dealership, it was just kind of there. And I don't know, something about it just looked good. So I've just kind of been stuck on them ever since. Yeah, generally so with the Brembos, because what happens is they get so hot from like if they're brown, then they've been tracked. If they're pink, like mine are pink. My car hasn't been tracked to the best of my knowledge. But what's happened is the clear coat's gone, and like I can actually see it. With when you see more of a brown, that's from tracking, typically autocrossing or just really any super hard driving. But you generally won't get brown unless it's been tracked. Me personally, I have not seen any prior to Evo 8s in the US. I'm even at like, I don't go to many like crazy car shows, but even at car shows, I haven't. So I haven't seen any. I know I'm so tempted to want to buy like an Evo 1 or Evo 2, but they're really just not good cars. So I don't know. For what they cost, it's hard to justify spending that kind of money just for the novelty. Oh, mods or upgrades? I mean, me personally, I wouldn't really do anything crazy. It's not exactly the greatest platform to start with, being the GTS. That said, you know, obviously you can always do things. I'm a big fan of cleaning things up. So, you know, anything that could just make it more seamless. I'd have to like look up what they look like exactly. I mean, I know what they look like. Oh yeah, so it's just, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do stuff, you know, if you're just at that point where you want to mod your car and this is what you have and you want to have fun with it, then I would go for just a clean look. I don't like when people do like the fake stuff, like try to make it look like a fake Evo or a fake whatever kind of car they have. But you could certainly do like some suspension wheels is probably where I would go. I wouldn't do anything crazy. Like don't go out and spend like $3,000 on coilovers. Like that's silly. But if you could find like some good springs or something, like some Swift springs or something, or they don't even have to be that expensive. Just something to kind of make it look a little cleaner. Get some wheels. What's the company that makes them? They tend to knock off a lot of companies. Rhoda wheels or something like that. You know, tint the windows. I'm a general fan of that. It looks like you can do like some conversions to make it more of like an Evo front end. Looks like people are just kind of like blacking out the center part of the bumper. I do admit that does look better. Like I just pulled up this one, somebody's done basically what I said. They lowered it. They painted the front of the bumper so it looks more Evo style. Got like some, I got like a front lip and some aero on the sides. Like it's a good looking car. I just wouldn't really mess with the engine or anything, honestly. You know, I wouldn't really mess with like exhaust or anything because I don't think it's going to sound very good. Because quite frankly, you know, even Evos don't really sound that good. I mean, I like the way they sound, but let's be honest, they're not like some like, oh, that sounds amazing type of car. After cam, you know, when my Evo 9 was cammed, so it had a decent lump to it. That was kind of cool. Yeah, I would say so. The Evo 6 Tommies, absolutely. You know, I mean, you're kind of paying for that premium though. It's almost like the final edition. You know, I know they did some other stuff to it, but I feel like most of that could be done in the aftermarket. Going back to the question about like the Evo 10 in the Midwest, you know, and ultimately you just got to do what's comfortable. The quickest way to get a bad deal on an Evo is to buy it quickly. My wife will confirm that I looked forever. She's over there nodding her head right now because, in fact, when my plane got canceled, like when I finally found my Evo and my plane got canceled because all the snow, I pretty much was just like, you know, it's just not even worth it. And she's like, no, you just need to go. I'm tired of you looking for this thing for however many years. So just be patient. Our 10 actually wasn't patient, but it was traded in the night before. It wasn't even on their books yet, so we got a good deal because they didn't have to prep it or anything. I basically signed a release saying like, I don't need you to prep it, and he sold it to me for a good deal. So. The same BBS wheels that I have, those are just Evo 10 BBS wheels. When I traded in the MR, the dealership didn't care what wheels and tires I had. Honestly, I think from their point of view, they liked the other tires because the winter tires only had a few thousand miles on them. They're practically brand new. So dealerships, you know, if they're going to put a car on their lot, and they actually did put that one on their lot, it's got to have good tires. So I think they actually preferred that. Yeah. Yeah. GSR 1379 basically said the same thing. Yeah. Lowered a bit, some wheels, windows, stereo. Yep. That pretty much sums it up. When you say BBS wheels, do you mean like OEM, like some Evo 10 BBS wheels? Because I mean, they're kind of expensive, but they're not too bad. But if you mean like you're gonna go buy like BBS wheels that were never on a OEM car, those are ridiculously expensive. So just FYI. On my 9, so my exhaust on my 9 was, it's kind of funny. Like I had a buddy who changed his exhaust, or what? I don't know. Somehow he had the axle back, like just the muffler. It was a Megan muffler. So he sold that to me cheap. And then I got a downpipe, which was actually Megan at the time. This was, the Evo 9s hadn't been out that long. So they were actually like kind of hard to find downpipes and stuff. This was like really early in the 9s. And because of the ACD, the downpipes from the 8s don't fit. I mean, you can make them fit, but it'll rub and kind of make noises and stuff. So I wouldn't suggest it. So I was able to get the Megan one at the time was like the only one I could find. So I got that. So I had a downpipe and I had the axle back, and I went ahead and installed those, which created this weird, because the downpipe was 3-inch and the axle back was 3-inch, but everything in between was like 2.5, OEM. So it created this weird noise at like highway speeds that would just, it gave me a headache just driving it to work. So I went to this muffler shop on the other side of town, and they were like really cool. They didn't care about basically, emissions or whatever. And I went in there and he was like, all right, so he just made me a pipe that connected the downpipe, a 3-inch straight as could be pipe that connected the downpipe to the exhaust. And that was it. And that's what I ran the whole time I had it. And it was fine. Was it the most efficient one? Nah, probably not. But it worked pretty well. You could definitely get lighter for sure. But it sounded good, especially once I got the cams, especially. But I do have a video. I'll have to find that somewhere. I have like a really old like BlackBerry video of that exhaust. Blow-off valve, depends. If you're like an 8 and a 9, I would just stick with OEM. An Evo 9 OEM one, not an Evo 8 necessarily if you're modding. I did the Brycer thing and bought a SSQ. Didn't know any better. Spent like $250 on that. That was a waste of money. It sounded cool, but it was completely stupid to waste money on that. Other than that, if you're going to do if you're actually doing performance and you need more than what the OEM can handle, then I would just go tile probably. Yeah, you guys get a lot of HKS stuff in other parts of the country. HKS doesn't quite have the following here in the US, I feel like. And quite frankly, a lot of their stuff is just really expensive. And I don't know if that's just a US thing or if that's everywhere. And wow, it's cool stuff. It's not necessarily better performing stuff. It's not necessarily worse either, but so I have a really hard time paying for the premium just for the name. Yeah, the exhaust, it was pretty loud. Did you ever hear my 9? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was pretty loud. I mean, I remember one time going to like a friend's house and they're like, yeah, we could hear you coming from like, I think they called me and I was about 5 minutes out. And granted, the road kind of winded around stuff. They're like, we can hear you. Like, you're not even here yet. Like, are you coming up the driveway? I was like, no, I'm like, I just got off the highway. Like, so it was pretty loud, but it didn't drone too bad. Once I got the issue fixed where it went out the back. Really, Lotus? Jeez. If you don't want it to be too loud, really a lot of that has to do with the axle back portion. So I know, I think it's MagnaFlow makes a quieter one. I know Busher sells it, and it can just make it quieter. So, and not really affect the performance much at that point because it's just at the axle back, really. Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, while my 8 might be stock, my 9 had 272 cams. It had obviously intake, exhaust, boost controller, all hard piping, upper and lower. Had an intercooler, had head studs, had fuel injectors, intake. Actually, I never technically had an intake, honestly. I had a filter, but never actually technically had an intake. And I had this stupid SSQ. I had Swift springs with stock struts. Had upgraded slotted rotors. Probably some other stuff I'm missing. Yeah, I mean, if you want quieter, I think they're one of the few people that advertise something as being quieter for sure. If I had money in the waist, I would actually get like a butterfly valve installed or made and installed. I don't know what HSDs are, but I know I'm also contemplating coilovers as well. So I definitely wouldn't run the cutout with the open pipe, but I have seen people run basically just a 3-inch pipe all the way out the back. And it actually sounds pretty good. It's just freaking loud, but I actually thought it sounded better than mine. It was just so loud. It's ridiculous how loud it was. But if you run like open downpipe or something like that, it's ridiculous. Yeah, and those tine springs are going to completely blow out your shocks. Ask me how I know. Oh yeah, I don't know about the coilovers. I just know I had tine springs on my first Evo, and I blew out the shocks within a few thousand miles. Maybe not a few thousand, maybe like, I don't know, 5,000 miles. That's why I switched to the Swift and got new shocks at that point. And yeah, it was too low. Yeah, I mean, that's about the budget because I mean, 800 pounds, that's going to be what, grand to 1200 here. So I know I've been looking at like, what's it? I can't remember what the name of them are now. About 1500 bucks, I feel like. Fortunato.
Are you okay?
It says past your dinner time.
Buddy, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people running the tine coilovers and being fine. It was just the tine springs just weren't matched well for the OEM struts was the issue. It's not that they were necessarily bad per se. They just weren't a good match. Yeah, that would be cool to adjust the height. 18-inch wheels did help fill in the gap a little bit, but the rear especially still looks too high on my car. Oh, that was a terrible idea. You don't want to test drive a built car. That's just going to ruin you for stock or anything less. Oh, no. That's going to be bad. I remember that's what ruined me. I had a stock. My Evo was basically stock, and I thought it was fine, or and then I rode in a FP green. Oh, that was the other mod. Yeah, my Evo 9 had an FP green eventually, but I rode in an FP green, fully bolt-on Evo 8, and that was just a different level than what I was used to, and that pretty much started me on the trip that ended with me spending a ton of money. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good deal or not. Yeah, there it is. I was going to say, because you never know who built it. Saying you have a built motor is fine, but who built it really? I mean, I can build you a house. I wouldn't trust it in anything other than like perfect weather. You laughing at my house building skills over there?
Yeah. I don't even think in perfect weather it would be okay.
Probably not. Oh yeah, that's cool to be able to change it on the fly like that. Not have to actually like go under and adjust the struts manually. I don't know that E85 and the weather necessarily. I do know that they changed the mixture. My biggest concern with running E85 is that it's not super regulated. I mean, it is, but if like look up like tests people have done for like E85 random samples and everything, and you can get some pretty wide ranges of the mixture because it really technically has to fall on a pretty broad spectrum. So it concerns me when your ECU is expecting something very specific. You know, basically how much room did the tuner put in to compensate if you don't get the right mixture. So that always kind of scares me a little in general, which is why I don't know that I would go E85. And it's just not everywhere yet. So I don't know. The temperature itself, though, the temperature doesn't bother me, more just the fact that as the temperature changes, you know, just like regular gas, they're changing the mixture. But I feel like they're better with regular gas. Like they've kind of honed that in a little bit more. Yeah, that sounds like a terrible car. Just, I don't know how people do that to their wheels. Like, I've curb rashed 4 times, and I vividly remember every time in my life because I've cringed every time. Yeah, I mean, flex fuel is definitely more of a, gives you that option. It's still, I don't know. I mean, if you're at that point where your car, like, that's where the next step is, like, I mean, it's better than when people used to run meth for sure. Cause I mean, there's a lot of problems, a lot more problems I feel like that could go with that. I don't know. You can get so much out of, you know, assuming you can run like 92, 93. I know some states can't and some other parts of the world can't, but I don't know. It just definitely, I mean, I could definitely see it for like a track day or something maybe, but day to day, I just wouldn't want to deal with it. I mean, as long as you know the risk and you're okay with it, I mean, there's tons of people out there doing it every single day. It's just another variable that personally I don't want to deal with, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Can't quite, looks like from like your little avatar, like you have an Evo. So I don't know what your mods are, but I definitely would, if you're going to do it, you know, do it later in the modding process because there's a lot you can get out of them off regular pump gas for a long time. Is that I don't know if that's an autocorrect issue. I don't know what a bow town is. I mostly stick to Auto Trader, and then once I've exhausted that, I'll go to like cars.com, and then if I'm really desperate, I'll do eBay, and then I'll also check like the forums, like Evo M or Evo 10 forums. I don't even bother with Craigslist anymore. the issue I have with like the forums and stuff is they're free typically to list to. So people just on a whim list their car for sale, and they may or may not be that serious. Where with like Auto Trader or Cars.com, they actually have to pay to list it. Doesn't mean they're going to be serious necessarily, but they're probably going to be more serious of a seller. And it's just a lot easier to search on those. Cars.com is not pleasant to search on compared to Auto Trader, but you can make it work, especially with the Evos because there's not that many of them. But yeah, like Craigslist, I don't mess with it. I mean, you can find a white Evo with that miles and a low price, just depending on which one. You know, if you want it to be an Evo 10, no problem. If you want it to be an Evo 9, that's going to be a problem. Never heard of Auto Tempest. I'm about to check that out. You done much testing with this website to see like how accurate it is? I wonder. Looks kind of cool. I'll have to try it some more. Yeah. I don't know. On the one hand, you're gonna pay so much for an Evo 9 that I'm tempted to say like only buy it if it's perfect. On the other hand, like you said, there's just, I mean, like I pulled up Auto Trader, pulled up like 14 of them. And out of those 14, just scrolling through real quick, I narrowed it down to like 3 or 4 that might even be worth looking at. So yeah, I mean, if you're wanting, especially if you're wanting one of the like more uncommon colors like the blue or something, good luck. But I mean, really, you know, unless you just have to have an Evo 9, you can get so much, there's so much more opportunities in the Evo 8s. Huh, Indiana, you're not too far from me. I don't know if you were here a little while ago when I was talking, but you know, I had to go to Atlanta. I had to drive round trip, canceled flights and everything to buy my Evo. So 4 to 5 hours. So you're putting in like probably maybe a 300-mile range in your search. Yeah, I mean, when I'm like legitimately looking to buy a car, like I know what I want, I go at least 500 miles. Basically, I don't want to cross. I tried like I don't really want to look. I'm in Cincinnati. I really don't want to go west of the Mississippi. With the one exception being, I would consider going to like Texas or something. That's not much. That's not too far past it. But like I don't want to go to like California or anything. Although I've given it some serious thought in the past on a couple of cars. Yeah, I mean, if you find the right 9 and that's what you want, I don't know. Judging by like, I don't know if you were the ones if you were the ones saying some stuff about. I don't know. I'm getting confused now, but I mean, like I still want to buy another Evo 9 someday, but it's only because I had an Evo 9. I just kind of want another one again because I had it. I don't actually really truly believe it's better than my 8. And I could certainly mod my 8. You know, the few things that make a 9 quote unquote better are not worth the price premium. So unless you like have that attachment to the 9 for some reason. So if you're referring to the guy in Indiana, we don't have Evo 7s in the US. So it's not an option. But yeah, I mean, if we could get older Evos, absolutely, I'd buy like an Evo 6 in a heartbeat. I mean, that's fine. Like you can have a dealership, there's nothing wrong with buying one at a dealership, but it doesn't necessarily like I've been to some big dealerships that, these aren't just like little mom and pop questionable dealerships on the side of the road, some big major dealerships. And I've test driven cars that were just disasters. And I've seen cars for sale on those lots that are just, you can just tell they're disasters from, mods and different things because they don't know. If the car comes in and it drives fine and it looks over fine, they're not going to know if it has vacuum leaks. They're not going to know if the turbo is about to blow. They're not going to know to look for things like fifth gear grinds and stuff. So, I mean, you're paying that premium and you're still taking on a lot of that risk by going through a dealership. I mean, if the dealership already has it and you like, that's fine. But it's just, it's hard. Now, if it's from like a financing standpoint, I'm not a fan of financing through dealers if you can avoid it, but you can always pay them and they'll sell it through you if that makes it easier for you to get like approved or something. And basically they'll just tack on, maybe $300 to $500 on top of the price. So if you find a seller selling a car for 20 grand, you find a dealership to basically be the middle person, you end up paying maybe $20,500, but then basically they're buying and reselling to you so you can go through their financing and all that stuff. In some states, that's especially important for like tax reasons. Not so much on a $20,000 car. You see that more on like supercars, people do it. So there's not really, I wouldn't say there's hacks in lowering the selling price. There, because the market is so small, especially if you're talking like 8s or 9s, especially. Obviously, use what other ones are for sale, but really it's just, I mean, if you're talking like a 9 or something, it's so hard because if you're looking at 9s, it means you know what they are and you're already identified as insane by looking at them. And they know that. So you really just got to come to a price that you're going to be happy with. I don't know what that price is necessarily going to be for you. But if you find a car that you like, but for you just want to get the price a little bit lower, I mean, you'd be shocked, but sometimes honesty is just helpful. Keep an eye on the car for a while. And then the biggest thing I would say is look for the obvious things, like does it need new tires? Does it need a new clutch? Like mine, the biggest thing I was able to talk him down some money on is I figured it probably had the fifth gear grind. And I asked him, I was like, does it grind when you go into fifth? And he's like, yeah, it does actually. And I was like, okay, that's about $800 to $1,000 to fix. And we came to a deal and he took that off, even though I knew good and well I wasn't going to fix it because it doesn't bother me. And I know that it's not going to create any long-term damage to anything else. I'll get it fixed eventually one day when the transmission's out of the car. But I'd say that's a big one you could do. $5,000, yeah, that's a good deal. Yeah, I'd buy for $5,000 too. I mean, you're hard pressed to find a shell for $5,000. Oh yeah. So I mean, you're in a good spot. You got the credit score, so as long as you can prove the income, yeah, you're not gonna have any problem getting financed. So really, it's just down to find the right car, and I mean, credit union is going to be your best friend on that too. If a dealership doesn't have it, just be mindful that if you do go through a dealership, you know, if you have them like be a middle person or anything like that, they have a tendency to tack on a little like 0.5% on the interest rate or something if you're not being careful. So it's really best if you, even if you know you're going to finance through them, still go out and apply for financing on your own and see what rates you can get. So if you know you can get, I don't know, 3%, and they come back and they say the best they can get you is 5%, well, then you have some negotiating there. You know that they're either lying or they just really can't get you better, at which point you need to do it somewhere else. Huh. Must be nice to have a friend that doesn't care about losing a ton of money. Yeah, see, I'm much more of a fan of spending cash to do stuff like that, like to flip a house or something. If you can turn your money over faster. I mean, you gotta think about it though. 5% on a car, 5% on a house, yeah, that's a lot. 5% on a car, it costs 20 grand over a few years. It's not really that much actual money. Also, I don't know that you're necessarily going to do crazy amount better. I mean, with the way interest rates are, I haven't applied for any loans in a couple years, but I mean, my Evo was 3%, and that was a pretty good deal, especially given the age. So, you're in that house buying world where, yeah, 5%, 30-year mortgage, yeah, that'll hurt you. But 5% on a car versus 3% over 4 or 5 years really doesn't equate to that much money. So I wouldn't necessarily stress it. Whereas, you take that 20, 30 grand in cash that you have, you can do a lot more. I mean, obviously, like you're talking about flipping houses, you can do a lot more with that. Yeah. So like just for rough numbers, 25,000 for 60 months. At 3% is 26.9. At 5% it's 28.3. So I mean, you're talking $1,400 for 5 years. I don't know that I necessarily want to tie up 25 grand of my own money. So, I mean, if I froze on your end, you didn't hear, basically just like what we were saying, tie up 25 grand for 4 years or 5 years, you know, somebody like you who can do something with that money, you can do a lot with it. So you got to look at it both ends. You know, what costs, you know, there's always a cost. Even if you're doing something to technically save money, there's still a cost. And that cost is you don't get to have that 25 grand for 5 years. And no problem, man. Yeah, I mean, if you guys like these, I can do more of these in the future. It's not really an issue. I mean, we're just kind of hanging out here. Although Lotus is starting to get a little restless. If you guys could see him. Lotus. You getting restless? So I'm about to take him out in a minute. It finally stopped raining. Yeah, I mean, 3% is not bad, but I mean, you can do, I don't know, you know, it depends on the vehicle and stuff too. But like I said, I mean, I did my 05 Evo and I financed that in, let's see, I don't know, 2015, 2016 or something. So, I mean, it was over 10 years old and I got 3%. 3% or 3.1. But then by the time the FJ got around to getting financed a couple years later, rates had gone up and I got 4.5. But I mean, the FJ, actually technically the FJ costs more money, but not much more. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, really not that much of a difference. I can't remember what the ST's at. It's somewhere around there, same range. I also don't keep cars generally that long either, so that's why I usually don't put too much stress into it. Oh, you're up now too? Getting up. You gonna say hi? I don't know which ones are the updated ones or even which ones are the not updated ones, to be honest. I mean, are you talking about like the relays, like the fuses, the fuse relays? I honestly don't know. yeah, yeah, I'm confused just reading about all the different colors. Yeah, that is. I can promise you, I've never the extent of my knowledge of dealing with the fuse boxes consist of replacing blown fuses and hardwiring a radar detector, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, I really don't mess with any of the electrical stuff. I don't mess with a lot of it anymore, especially, but I never messed with electrical. So I am unfortunately just not the person to answer that question for you. Sorry, man. So I played hockey in high school and college, so I've been to a lot of random places around here. Not sure if I've been to Greencastle. Not sure where that's at. Let me look it up real quick. Just west of Indianapolis. I don't think so. I've been to Indy a couple times for some different things. I feel like I've probably been there for like some tournaments or something, but I don't think so. I've probably driven by it or close to it. I know we went up to Fort Wayne a bunch of times, and we went to Bloomington a few times. So, I mean, I've been close, but I don't think I've actually been in Greencastle. Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah, did a lot of traveling back then. Um, it depends. I mean, I ran a test pipe mostly because I didn't want to pay the money for a high flow cat, but I was all about saving money back then. Today, I don't know. It just depends. I mean, if you live, well, now California's getting even crazier with their exhaust restrictions, but depending on where you live and how strict that stuff is, I mean, obviously my test pipe looked kind of like a catalytic converter. You know, it bulged out a little bit and it had an O2 sensor, obviously, and everything. Um, I mean, less resistance is generally better, but I don't think it's going to be like crazy. So if you're in a part of the country or part of the world where you're even slightly concerned about like O2 testing, or, you know, they actually like look at your car closely, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing like a high flow cat. And the thing too is a lot of this stuff, you know, if you're really, really racing, yeah, it makes a difference. But generally speaking, the incremental upgrades you can get from just completely bypassing things like catalytic converters versus a high flow cat and different things, in the grand scheme of things, for most people just driving on the street isn't going to be a noticeable difference. Yeah, if you go to the drag strip or something, yeah, you might see a time slip difference, but driving it to work on Monday morning, you're not really going to be able to tell a difference. So if it comes to peace of mind versus a tenth on the quarter mile, I'll take the peace of mind. Well, Judging by your history that I know, I would say I'm surprised if you haven't already slammed the hood on it. Yeah, figured. That's good because you're gonna break stuff, and it's good that you have your own tow truck already. But yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, if you're like actually like taking it to a track, like it's gonna be a race car, then honestly, I mean, you could look for a car that's more beat up and stuff. I mean, as long as everything's still like usable and everything, I mean, you're gonna end up stripping or replacing a lot of the stuff anyway, so might be able to save yourself some money. No sense paying a premium for like a really nice condition, low mileage one and then gutting it. Yeah. I don't think you were here when we were talking about how I used to have an SSQ blow off valve. That thing was ricey as can be and a big waste of money. Can you, I don't even know. Can you see? Yeah, I ran my SSQ vented for quite a while too. Didn't even know I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't helping things. Honestly, I mean, as long as the handling's, as long as the handle, like all the suspension parts are in good working order. I mean, if you want to like, you know, put some decent springs on more for an aesthetic purpose, but I don't know how much experience you have with the cars, but they handle really well. So, I mean, you're not going to get, I mean, if you're coming from something other than an Evo and you go to an Evo, you don't need to upgrade the suspension right away. You're going to enjoy it just the way it is for a while before you're going to feel like you need to push it further. other than, like I said, if you want to lower it a little bit because you don't like the 4x4 status, it doesn't look nearly as bad on the 10s as the 8s and 9s do. But yeah, I mean, if the suspension's in good working order, I would just leave it be. Yeah, well, I didn't realize it was changing the sound of the blow-off valve. I don't know what I didn't know a lot of stuff back then. In fact, if memory serves, the shop told me I should probably spend my money elsewhere, and I said, no, that's okay. I'm still going to buy it. You know, I don't even think I knew to this day that those were sound inserts, honestly. But that's what's loose in there. I thought it was broken. It might just be the inserts loose. Because I still have that stupid thing. I had to dig it out and look at it.
So said 2 hours is the cutoff.
Is that right, Enzo? Gonna cut it off.
He said 2 hours is too long.
Oh yeah, so obviously you already have an Evo. So I mean, yeah, if you're getting to that point where you feel that you could do some benefits, I mean, yeah, you know, I mean, you're getting to a point where you want more, and you know, really, then it just comes down to, you know, I don't know where you live. Obviously, you sound like you live near some canyons, so probably out west somewhere. You know, are these canyons something that you're doing like every weekend, or is this like, you know, once every 6 months you make it out there? You know, then it's really, do I want to buy mods that I'm gonna notice every 6 months, or do I want to buy mods that I'm gonna notice every day? But like I said, if you're going to the canyons like every weekend and that's like what you enjoy doing, then yeah, I mean, suspension, obviously, I would do that. So I've got a whole video on the 8s and 9s, but I will boil it down to this. Only buy a 9 if you're insane and you feel that you've got some unrational attachment to the 9s, because whatever benefits the 9s have over the 8s cannot overcome the price difference of an 8 and a 9, unless you find just some unicorn crazy deal on a 9 that generally isn't going to happen. So, I mean, if you could theoretically find an exact Evo 8 and exact Evo 9, like mileage and prices, like where they should be for what they are, you're going to see a multi-$1,000 difference in price, and you can easily overcome that slight performance gain of, you know, Mavic and stuff by aftermarket at that point. Yeah, I agree. Definitely keeping it as clean as possible. Just doing a little one.
It's in bed.
Lotus, you getting antsy? Come here, Lotus. Come say hi. You getting antsy? You see yourself, don't you?
I'm gonna look on here.
Enzo actually likes to watch TV and stuff. Or Enzo, Lotus, I mean. All right. Well, he's getting pretty antsy. So I need to get them out. I never expected this to go 2 hours, which I'm extremely grateful that it has. It's been super fun. I will definitely, honestly, I didn't even know if anybody would show up. So real quick, let's see. Yeah, insane amount of horsepower. Yeah, stuff's going to break, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to which one you're going to enjoy most day to day. If you're going to enjoy the handling more, if you're going to get more out of that, then absolutely go the handling route. But if you're only going to really be able to feel that handling difference so often, then, you know, I would go the mods route probably, because the suspension can take a decent amount before you start overpowering it. So I don't know. I don't know, man. Really depends on what's going to be more fun to you. You're one of the, you know, it sounds like you are hitting that limit kind of where you feel like you could do more. And if that's really important to you, you know, ask yourself, like, is driving through those canyons the funnest thing? And if it is, would it be more fun if you had more power or more fun if you could turn faster? My guess is probably more fun if you could turn faster. But I don't know. That's something you really just kind of got to decide for yourself. I mean, yeah, it's cooler to say I have way more horsepower than XYZ cars, and that looks cool on Instagram when you post it and showing off your cool mods. But the fact of the matter is, it's whatever you love more. And like I said earlier in this, I don't know if you were here, but it's why people who do like these massive turbos end up not liking it eventually, because it's just, yeah, it's really cool and it's cool at the drag strip and it's cool at the track or whatever, but day-to-day living, it's not that fun. It's not really fun to them. They miss the torque and everything. So you can be the kind of the difference there where you miss the handling. But yeah, no problem. Appreciate you guys being here. Yeah, everybody goes the power route first. But honestly, I'm right there with you. Now, part of it is my suspension on my car's getting older, but I'm probably going to do suspension before I do any type of power. So plus power just breaks stuff. Suspension generally won't break stuff. So I'm tired of breaking stuff. No problem, man. You too. Appreciate you guys again. And, you know, comment on the other videos or Instagram me with any other questions you guys have. It's that Will Sanders on Instagram. If you guys message me and I don't respond, sometimes it gets like Instagram's spam filter is insanely sensitive. So if I don't message you back, just like leave a comment on one of my photos or something, because those they always tell me about. Just be like, hey, check your messages or something, or check your DMs. Other than that, though, appreciate you guys. And as usual, Enzo, you say bye. And say bye-bye. Yeah, and go for a walk. And go for a walkie. Oh, Lotus, you want to go for a walk too? All right, man. Thanks, man. I will keep them up. See you guys later. Oh. See you guys.